I call to order this meeting of the Stow-Munroe Falls City School District Board of Education on June 30th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
East Jenkins.
Here.
Merlidy.
Here.
Sheehan.
Here.
Sudonic.
Here.
Wind.
Here. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everything we do is designed to provide a future-ready, student-centered learning experience for every single child. Our strategic plan for 2021 through 2026 will help us accomplish this goal by considering every facet of a student's learning experience, from curriculum to infrastructure to wellness and everything in between. As members of the Board of Education, we serve as trustees. Therefore, this is a business meeting being conducted in public, not a public meeting. We are grateful to serve an engaged community and therefore encourage and respect input from citizens. We expect that everyone present will behave in a manner consistent with the behavior we expect of our students. We reserve the right to have those who do not comply removed from our meeting.
Excuse me, before we move on, I would like to make a motion, since I didn't see one on here, to add a public comment section to the agenda after section 7.
We cannot change the agenda for a special meeting. This is a special meeting. We have to stick to the purposes for the meeting that were in the notice, and public comment was not one of them. Mr. Galano?
Wish to recommend that the Board of Education approve the FY25 final appropriations as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Mr. Galano, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, so just finalizing our appropriations. Appropriations are basically the maximum at the time we can spend per fund. So if you look at those, you could see those are broken down by fund, and then in schools it's broken down by cost center. So there's many more cost centers associated with this, but for appropriations it's just at the fund level. So this is what we spent this fiscal year in those specific funds. So just finalizing our appropriations so that I always like to zero them out. So that's exactly what we spend in each fund for this fiscal year.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. Patrick, if, I looked at those numbers, and is there anything that, if I looked at them a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, that might cause me to pause, that I might have missed, that was kind of maybe iffy?
No.
So, Mr. Galano, this is all in line with all of our monthly reports that we've been getting throughout the fiscal year.
Yes.
Anything further? Roll call, please.
East Jenkins.
Aye.
Merlidy.
Aye.
Sheehan.
Aye.
Sudonic.
Aye.
Wind.
Aye. Next item.
I wish to recommend that the Board of Education approve the FY26 permanent appropriations as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, and so this, as what we did for our final, we will do for the next upcoming fiscal year. This happens every single year. So basically we're saying at this point in time, we're going to spend the maximum in these funds. In the event we are going to exceed that, we would bring it back to the board and increase these as necessary. Some of the things that we kept the same was some of our titles, our title grants, because some of those are unknown at this time, and we have not received all of our allocations, but we have received some.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
East Jenkins,
Aye.
Merlady,
Aye.
Sheehan,
Aye.
Siodolnik,
Aye.
Wind.
Aye.
I wish to recommend that the Board of Education approve the transfer request as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second. Mr. Galano?
So looking back at the 5-year forecast, in one of the lines toward the bottom of the forecast, it was the transfers. So it was, I think, projected to be 315. I don't quote myself. So we're knowing that we were going to transfer from general fund into athletics and from general fund into the field house to cover any negative fund balances. So these are the negative fund balances: $150,037.12 into athletics, and then $175,749.78 into the field house. So once this is approved, we'll take the money from general fund to cover the negative fund balances in those two areas to make them whole. And it's pretty typical for athletics to do this. Moving forward, we hope that we could be even, if not positive, for the field house.
Any questions?
Yeah, Patrick, that last statement you just said here, where 3-9325, the $150,037.12, a negative fund balance at the athletic department, you said that's typical. Why is this typical?
Yeah, so a lot of say athletics or 300 accounts, they typically go in the red, just because you usually spend more than you bring in for athletics. So what some schools could do, you would have like athletic accounts, and then you would have general fund accounts. So once you would like exceed your cash for athletics, so it's basically would be zero, you would send everything to general fund. But then you don't get a true cost of how much it is for athletics. Where right now we get a true cost for athletics. So we could say, athletics cost us $300-some thousand, but we only brought in $200-some thousand. So then that's the difference that general fund would have to cover. You just kind of get a rough estimate or true cost for how much each fund is costing the district.
So this wouldn't indicate necessarily like overspending and spending over the budgeted amount. It's just what we bring in versus what we.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at that. Yep.
Okay.
I think last year what we did was we had some general fund accounts as well for like athletics and Arbiter or Dragonfly now to pay some of our officials. So I decided to just keep everything in the athletics funds just so we could really see how much it costs each year.
Aren't the 300 accounts, aren't those the team accounts? Or is there more inside of this 300 account?
Yeah, so there's more inside the account. So the actual 300 fund name is district managed student activities. Athletics just falls under that. So when you look at some reports, the 300-9325, that is the athletics fund.
And now when you said typical, I mean, after a while, wouldn't you kind of have a handle on this so you could get a little closer to 150,000? That seems like a pretty big number. School's 9 months, that's 16,000 a month. Isn't there the things vary that significantly in the athletic department that we would be off that much and we have to pull it from the general fund?
I know we spent some funds on uniforms this year, so we always could take a look at what we're going to pay for and what the fundraising accounts or some of the boosters might be willing to help pay for. So there's always ways that we could look at lowering this amount and also looking at bringing back pay to participate, which would help subsidize the cost.
That's what I was going to point out. It feels like the 150,000. It sounds right around the amount of the pay to participate, or maybe a little bit less than.
I would have to look into that.
The other thing is, I just want to reiterate, it's not about budgeting here. This is about how much the athletics has brought in. So it's not about, like, I don't know how you would come around, how that would account for we should be able to know better. It's just a matter of if athletics is going to be self-supporting or if it's going to need money from general funds, and that's not something that you have to plan for. That's like, it just doesn't, I don't know. It sounds like you're making it sound like it's been overspent by $150,000, but that's not what this is.
No, you're not inside my head. You don't know what I'm thinking, so please
So
don't
then what
accuse
are
me
we
of
talking
that.
about with planned for?
I'm talking to Patrick. I would, again, just think that, I would think that we're just pulling this money from the general fund. It just, and well, let me ask you this, does the athletic department have a budget?
They do have a budget, yes.
They do have a budget.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned uniforms. Well, uniforms are on a schedule, aren't they? Aren't they on a kind of a rotating schedule that, so we can kind of anticipate that so many teams are going to get new uniforms in 26, so many teams are going to get uniforms in 27?
Yeah, I believe we have tried to stretch the uniforms when we can, and then once we realize that they are no longer usable, that's when, in the past couple years, they have spent. So they may have deviated from that schedule. I can't really speak to that, but I know that talking with some of the athletic department staff, that they've said, they're looking at the uniforms and like, I want to let my own child wear this, so I'm not going to let somebody else's child wear it. So that's when they would invest the funds in buying new uniforms.
I believe the band uniforms were stretched for sure. That was one that I thought like that got pushed. So even if it was planned for, it was pushed back. So some of those things that they maybe wanted didn't happen quite as soon as they wanted it to.
So again, can't that be taken into account? And we know, okay, our schedule said 4 years. Well, maybe we need to do it at 5. So and we look at that number and we say, okay, this is what that's going to look like with 5. I would guess uniforms are probably a pretty big item, depending on how many teams would need new uniforms. But, when the public sees this, again, I can't control what they're going to think, but, they might think, hey, the athletic department didn't budget correctly, and we have a oops here, and we have to put $150,000 back into the fund. I guess maybe if you could do this, and this might help me, and obviously I don't want it right now, I would like to know, going back, say, 5 years, what kind of positive or negative fund balance we've seen in the athletic department, just for my own knowledge, if you can, and I can email you or text you again on that, because I'd be curious to know that, because that's a big number.
Yeah, I can do that for you.
So there is a budget. So I guess what's the point of the budget when you go over $150,000? At some point, can you kind of see this happening? Like you get into halfway through the year, we're going to have a problem. We're going to go over what we had budgeted.
This is not the budget that they're over. This is amount that athletics brings in versus how much they've spent, which is not the same thing as the budget. It is the amount that was put into the athletics fund.
Yes,
That is
based
not the
on
budgeted
a
amount.
shortage. Based on a shortage. If they weren't short, they wouldn't need $150,000.
That's not accurate.
Mr. Galano, could you reiterate what this transfer is about?
Yeah, so what this is showing is that the 309,9235 Fund Special Cost Center spent more than it brought in. So one of the things we did do to help increase the revenue is we did increase ticket prices, and we started that, and then the team consortium, they increased their prices as well. So that also helped with bringing more funds. The athletic department, as well as other departments, do set budgets. So for them, it's a lot of per team sports. We have a plethora of teams, a lot of them both male and female, and they each have to budget for that. As one season ends, they shift those allocations for budgets to help cover some other unforeseen costs that may pop up. When it comes to going to states, districts, those types of things that you hope for, but it's hard to plan for without over budgeting. So really just comes down to that we brought in less than we spent.
So
And it's not,
tickets and all of that brings in less than what it costs to put on our sports.
yeah, we know some sports bring in a lot more money than other sports. So those ones really help set the budgets for other sports as well.
And if I had asked you a year ago kind of how you saw the athletics fund looking now, is this pretty much in line with that expectation that we would have had last year?
Well, last year we did more like general fund budgets and expenditure adjustments. So it's hard to identify that to get a precise answer. But I'm sure if I did some deeper digging, I could get that information for you.
So just to be clear, what this number indicates is the amount of difference between what athletics brought in as revenue versus what we've spent. So the total we've spent as a district on athletics that came out of our general fund is $150,000. And this is calculated this way so that we can make sure to give a true number, being transparent to the public of what our athletics costs. It is not indicative of overspending by $150,000. Whether or not a department is self-sustaining or not, or whether a department is following their budget or not, are two separate issues that should not be conflated.
Yes, nicely said.
Well, Patrick, you just said we spent more than we brought in. So again, I would like to, I'm gonna email you or text you or whatever to get the last 5, just to see if there's a trend. Again, if I'm running a business and I'm finding that at the end of the year, I'm over 150,000, there would be some issues there. So we'll just see if there's a trend here. Because again, at some point you get a feel for what it's been costing you to run your department. Now we go to the next one, the field house. How in the world did we, the field house was supposed to be a something that wasn't going to, that we had the funds to do it. How did we get to 175,000 over what, I don't even know what the number is over, but how do we end up spending more than $175,749.78 on the field house?
So the field house was paid out of permanent improvement funds. The field house, once it was up and opened, we created the 013. It's a recreational fund to bring in funds and also to pay anybody who was sustaining that building. So when we first opened that building had $0 starting out. The goal was to break even or to have cash balance. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So that's how we are at transferring $175,000. We did bring in some dollars to the field house, just not enough to cover the entire expenditures of that building for the fiscal year.
Could you give us an idea of what expenditures for the building means?
Yeah, so it was any salary benefits for staff who were at the building, so the special projects administrator who was overseeing the building, anybody who was who was there to open the door for some of the rentals we had, cleaning supplies, utilities, any things that needed fixing. I know we had to buy some filters for the air vents, so some of those expenditures and supplies needed to keep the building operational.
And I'm under the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's contractual language that dictates, when the building is open, that there's whether it's janitorial staff, so those are things. I'm sorry?
Yeah, so the classified contract does dictate when employees need to be at certain buildings, and that was one of them, that when we were having children and or any events happening at the field house, that we would needed to have a custodian present. So that's one thing that we did work out through the last negotiations.
So that's just something, just for transparency, when someone uses the field house, it's not free to us, because we do have a cost associated that is a contractual obligation that we have.
And it's the same thing that we were talking about athletics, getting a true measure of accounting for how much it's going to cost, how much it's going to cost to operate the field house. This is our first fiscal year with it, so we're going to start really gathering that data moving forward.
obviously like to see that number go down.
I like to see revenues go up and expenditures
That's true.
don't go
Revenues
down.
up.
So what you're saying is, when this was in the planning phases, and as we broke ground and started to build this, nobody factored it was going to cost us $175,749.78 to run this building?
I believe at the time that this was in the talks, there was not a special projects administrator, and I don't think there was a plan of who was going to really oversee the field house at the time, but we knew somebody would be doing that.
Wouldn't that have cost us more if we did have somebody in that position? Wouldn't we have been paying that person?
I think it would have determined of what level of the administrator would have been in that position.
Now, is this a separate line item? Does this have its own budget? Is this a 300 account going forward? And we're sitting here a year from now, and we see a negative fund balance for the field house. I mean, what are we doing to eliminate that?
Yeah, so it is a recreational account, a 013 fund, and they do have a budget. This year's was the bulk of the budget was definitely salary and benefits, very few supplies, and then next will be utilities, water, gas, and trash and sewer. So there is a budget.
Okay.
And then, I mean, I'm 99.999% sure that this number will not be this grand unless we have major issues with the building.
And who's to blame for that?
Blame for what?
The major issues in the building?
No, there's no major issues currently, but I'm just saying, moving forward for next year, if we see this high number, there would have to be something drastic to happen in the building that we would be transferring a large sum out of general fund.
So you're anticipating next year this being much less?
Or
Or-
zero, yep. Or having a cash balance at the end.
I mean, certainly that's the goal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Through rentals. We did have several contracts for the field house this past year, which was nice to have. Sadly, it just wasn't enough to keep it balanced.
So I go back to, again, things I've mentioned in the past. So there's no one accountable for this. I'm supposed to sit here and just say, okay, we're going to pull $325,786.90 out of our general fund to pay for negative balances between a building that was not supposed to cost us money and an athletic department that has trouble balancing how much they need to spend each year. I mean, you look at 325, you look at the situation with the person that's not there that costs us 247,000. You have that person who was there who's now gone, to get rid of them cost 251,000. That's $823,454 we spent last year and have nothing to show for it. So we got to do a better job, folks. We got to do a lot better job.
And I'm going to repeat again that the $150,000 is not over budget. It's because athletics is not a self-sustaining department, nor is it supposed to be. It is for our students, so.
So maybe it would be helpful to explain, do we have departments that are self-sustaining, that bring in what they need to operate, and what that looks like? Maybe giving a couple of examples of that, and then perhaps telling us what the athletic budget is for the year and what we've spent might help this to make more sense, because I think it's just a confusion piece. I don't think it's that we need to argue, but I think we just need to make it clear.
Yeah, I could definitely have that for one of the upcoming meetings to make it clearer to anybody who's having some issues understanding that. And then, so it is the only one that I would say that is probably self-sustaining would be like fundraiser accounts, student 200 accounts that are student driven, and then our food service. So it's kind of hard to say because, we're in the business of educating. So it's hard to say, like, we don't have a lot of resources that, we're selling things or pulling it in and managing that by funds. So to easy recap, 006 food service, they're pretty healthy, which is nice. I think they have $1 million in their fund, which before COVID, it was usually transferring money into that account, making sure students are fed.
Would you mind speaking a little louder?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll get closer to the mic. So 006 food service. They're pretty healthy. You know, we get subsidized from the government, but also we take in cash from students who are buying lunch and breakfast. 200s accounts, because those are a lot of fundraising dollars, as well as our 300s that are not the athletic funds. So there's not too many of them that have a lot of ins and outs.
So because the students are paying for their lunch, that's bringing in revenue that offsets their cost. Whereas in athletics, they're not paying to participate, and they're not paying for additional things. So it's more of a service that we're offering
Yes.
than something that's bringing in revenue.
Yep, and then the ticket sales would be the revenue to help to offset the expenses. Yes.
But those ticket sales don't cover the entire cost of that department. And that's the difference that we're transferring over, is the difference between ticket sales and the expense of that department.
I think the term negative fund balance is what makes it sound like an overspending issue, but we don't have, I'm not even saying if there is or isn't an overspending issue. We just don't have that data in front of us. That would be related to the budget, not related to this, what we're looking at right now.
And Patrick, what is the budget this last year for the athletic department?
I'm trying to get into the system, and it's having some technical difficulties, but I will also email that to you as well, Mr. Sheehan.
I mean, again, is it, again, 300,000, 500,000, 600,000? I'm not going to hold you to that number, but
Yeah, it's within the couple hundreds of thousands.
so 200,000 just for the sake of.
Yeah, I'd say
okay.
two to three.
So, all right, so we'll say 250. All right, so you're saying 250, but what this is saying here is we need another 150 to balance that 3-9325 account. Is that, am I understanding this right?
If you do that math, Mr. Sheehan, if the department's services activities cost $250,000 and it currently needs $150,000 from general fund, that means it brought in $100,000 in ticket sales. So it's not self-sustaining, but it did bring in some of the money that it is budgeted to spend.
And the reason for separating it out like this is for transparency, so that we can see the true cost of athletics, which is $150,000 this year.
So going back to the question I just asked, you said 250,000 was kind of the budget. You're asking for another 150. So is that saying that in this year, that it costs 400,000 to run the athletic department?
No, it's not another 150. If the total is 250 and they need 150 to make it whole, it's just $100,000 that they've raised or brought in. The total is always still going to be the 250. It's not, you're not adding those numbers together.
Okay, so then we're short 50,000 then, or 100,000 then in this example.
So in this example, we're short the 150, but we raised the 100.
Well, okay, reverse it the other way. Okay.
If hypothetically the budget was $250,000 and that's what was spent, that means that we would have to raise $150,000 more to be self-sustaining by raising ticket prices, by raising more money through, charging parents more for pay to play, et cetera. So these are things that, obviously are not necessarily what we're doing right now. So that's the difference, being what cost versus.
So then where the number could be affected is we're looking at all these athletic teams, and maybe we're having to kind of tighten our belt and maybe look at a 200,000 instead of 250.
Which sports are you recommending that we cut?
I didn't say about cutting, I'm just trying to understand this.
Yeah, and
Just so I'm understanding this.
some of the expenses that are outside of our control are our official prices. Those seem to just keep going up, and we're at the mercy of them to make sure that we have officials so we could operate the games and make sure that our students have a match or a game to play at. So that is just one of the things of the many expenses that the athletics are expensing. So
Right, so it's not just uniforms and fields, it's officials, it's supplemental contracts for coaches and staff, It's all of those things that, oh, and health professionals to be there as well for our athletes. So there's a lot of expenses in running athletic programs.
Yeah, and then if our teams make it further at the end of each season to districts or states, you have those costs as well, hotel costs and admission prices as well. But by all means, I do work with the athletic department on like, hey, how can we rein it in, but also not like make huge cuts to where the students are going to see a huge difference in the sport. We want to make sure that we're giving them the best opportunity we can with the best equipment and the best uniforms, even though maybe they're a couple years old, but it's not like we buy brand new every single year.
No, I'm all for that. And I mean, based on what you're saying and getting a better understanding, I would like to see maybe that number a little closer together. Yeah. And seeing what we can do to be responsible as far as our finances.
Yeah, and then the finance committee has, once we were talking about fees, we did talk about pay to participate again. So that'll be coming up in this fiscal year that we'll be talking about that for the future reinstatement.
Right, and one of the questions was sort of getting that feel for what other districts, especially our 6th district, compact schools, what other districts are doing in terms of their athletic costs, how they might be offsetting them, doing some of that research and that background for that to really look at what are our options.
Yeah, and it's pretty common to transfer into athletics, and I'm sure a lot of school districts, if not all of them, transfer into the athletic fund because it is it's costly like everything else.
Anything further? Roll call, please.
East Jenkins.
Aye.
Merlady.
Aye.
Sheehan.
No.
Siodonic.
Aye.
Wind.
Aye. Okay, next on our agenda, I will entertain a motion to enter executive session for purpose 121.22 G1 to consider the employment of a public employee or official. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, we're in executive session at 6:32 p.m. There
Wait,
will be.
We have to roll call?
Oh, sorry. Get ahead of myself. East Jenkins.
Aye.
Merlady.
Aye.
Sheehan.
All right.
Siodonic.
Aye.
Wind.
Aye. There
We're
we
in
go.
executive session at 6:33 p.m.
And there
There
will be more
action
business
taken
after.
after.
Okay, we are back from executive session at 7:10 p.m. Our next item of business, superintendent's recommendation.
Good evening. I would like to recommend the following personnel recommendations.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, to start us out, Dr. Gould, did you have anything to say about these to get us started?
This section.
No. Okay. I did want to say we have been talking over the course of several meetings about supplemental contracts and some of the concerns around how those have been handled in the past. Was there anything about that that we wanted to share out at this point?
So as we begin to look at our supplemental contracts, we have created a process so that everyone will be on the same playing field when it comes to supplementals. We have created a rubric that we will be sharing with our athletic director that will actually be used as part of the interview process and also to be used as an evaluation tool, something that will be useful for our head coaches when they are looking at the coaches that will be working with them, and to provide some consistency across that process.
So those would be used for all of our coaching supplementals, our head coaches, assistants, just throughout various sports.
Yes, and so we wanted to come up with something that could be used by anyone. So we tried to create something that was very neutral, because a lot of our coaches are not coaches within our district. So we wanted to make something user-friendly for them.
Wouldn't this just apply to the head coaches?
Yes, the head coaches would be using it for when they are looking at hiring their assistant, JV, freshman, all of those type of things. But it would provide that consistency across the board.
Right, so the only place where we're involved is at the point of the evaluation of the head coach. The head coach then has the opportunity to pick and use this rubric if he so desires or she desires for his assistants based on the teacher contract. Am I understanding that right? Assistant coaches aren't going to have to go through all this with the athletic director and the
No.
HR. It's just the head coach.
No.
So we have 26 sports, we have 26 meetings.
Yeah.
Not 150 based on all the assistants.
Well, depending on who they're hiring. I mean, they may have a freshman coach, they may have a JV coach, they may have, those different levels. So they would need to use this. This would be an evaluation tool for them as well.
Well, yeah, they could use it. I mean, the head coach. So you take football, you have a head coach, he has his 8 or 9 assistants, he has a JV team. Mm-hmm. Is the head football coach also overseeing Kimpton, head coach? Is he involved in that, or is that separate?
We have a head coach for Kimpton.
Right, but is that under the umbrella of the head high school football coach?
I would have to look into that.
Just to know that if he would have to, the person applying for the head football coach at Kimpton would have to meet with HR and the athletic director, but then he would be free to pick his assistants, and if he chooses to use this, that's up to him.
We're going to be making a recommendation that everyone use this tool to provide that consistency, so that there's no discrepancy occurring when people are going through the interview process.
So the goal is to make those decisions as consistent district-wide
Yes.
as we can.
Yeah.
And the rubric is both for selection and for evaluation.
Yes.
And the goal is to use that for evaluation of all level of coaches, including head coach.
Head coach sometimes is a little bit differently because you're looking more in depth with a little bit more experience in all of those type of
Okay.
things. Yeah.
Well,
But
again,
we
just
would
to
still
get
be
clarity,
using
the
some type of rubric. I'm sorry, Mr. Sheen. I
no,
didn't
it was
hear you.
me. Finish, please.
I just said that when you're looking at the head coach, we would have some type of rubric for them as well.
All right, I get that part, which is good. But in the contract, it says the head coach then has the responsibility of picking his assistants. He may or may not want to use this. You may tell him he needs to use it, but he may or may not, or she may or may not. But the assistant coaches are the responsibility of the head coach. Is that correct?
Yes.
It says, in the contract, it says they have input. It doesn't say they have the responsibility to pick.
But our concern is to make sure that we have tools that we need when we're making decisions in regards to evaluations, because that should be part of the process. So we want to make something that's uniform and easy for all of our coaches to use without them having to try to figure out what tool they need to use for that.
So we're talking about an HR putting this in place and HR telling the coaches, here is the tool that we're expecting you to use.
And that's why I said we will be meeting with the AD to go over the information. There may be some more input that he or she would like to add to that, and then we'll move from there.
So right now, this isn't the policy, because again, just looking at trying to remember by memory the teacher contract, which said the head coach is in charge of hiring their assistants. You may be adding something hypothetically that tells the head coach, part of your responsibility as the head coach is to do this rubric for all of your assistants.
Yes.
So if we have an issue with an assistant, we can
go
pull
back
that
and just
out and
pull-
say,
Yes.
you know, this guy was iffy, or this guy's doing a good job, and maybe had a bad day, or whatever. Okay, but we're not there yet. Now, would that require a change in the contract? Because that's not what the teacher contract says right now.
Yeah, Mr. Sheehan, you're misstating that language that we approved at the last meeting. It was that head coaches have input, not full control over.
It says input, okay, if it says input.
It says input.
But it would not change what the head coach is doing. It actually provides them with a tool for them to be able to easily say if they are recommending for that person to return or not.
I think if you go back to the contract, it actually outlines some criteria that would be giving those assistant coaches a higher score of whether or not they're a certified teacher, whether or not they have experience, and that's all outlined in the contract. And
that's
then it
also-
says the head coach would have input. It doesn't say that they can just pick anybody. They have to be qualified.
And so that's why one of the sections on the rubric talks about qualifications, and there's room for them to actually write something and not just do the 1 through 5. There's room for them to write evidence as well.
And now, too, the way it states now, it's the AD and the HR, they're the only two involved in the initial process with the head coach?
Usually, in the past, it has only been the AD. It hasn't been HR up until recently. Most of the recommendations in the past came from the athletic director.
So that's how it's going to stay as far as the conversation is with the athletic director.
Right.
Except in basketball, which we have a difference there. The HR is involved in that, correct? Boys basketball, as far as the evaluator?
In the evaluation?
Yes, the HR is going to be, well,
Oh, the head basketball coach, yes, because.
yes,
we-
in boys,
right,
because of
we have
conflict of interest?
There's a conflict of interest, yes.
Okay?
So this is a piece of the overall getting our HR ducks in a row.
Yes.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I have some, on the page 3, is this the carryover from the June, from last week? That's that page 3, the supplements, because I know we had a employment recommendation come up and we tabled it. Is that all that was on that? Is that page 3, which is coaches, or were there more teachers on this page? Were there any added from, I guess, last week?
Yes, there are some that were added from
All right, so it's the one from last week and some added.
Yeah.
Okay. And it looks like we did have some athletic-related coaches hired. Of that list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, how many of those are teachers?
Hang on.
I mean, if you don't want to say the name, that's fine. You can just kind of start at the top and yes, no, teach, yes, however.
Oh, 2, sorry, 2.
2.
On that list.
So 2 of them, and on this column, where would that person be? Towards the beginning, the middle, end?
One is in
I know who-
the top section, and one is in the middle.
Okay. All right. Top section, 1, 2, 3, or 4?
3.
3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So the rest of them are not. All
There's
right.
one in the middle.
Well, yeah, and there's 2 of this list are not. Okay.
Well, I think that's similar to what Dr. Gould was saying earlier, that a lot of our coaching supplementals are community folks versus employees, that it's actually a minority who are employees for these supplementals.
Majority of our coaches are from outside of our district.
Right. So, all right, so I'm assuming I mean, it looks like a good majority of this is in the cheerleading realm. I'm assuming with all these new protocols, all these people have met that, have interviewed, filled out forms, did everything that they needed to do based on new. I mean, I'm looking at a fall sport or a winter sport here. I don't know, I thought, yeah, that's another winter sport. There's a couple of winter sports on here, but how did, and I think I saw somewhere, is it true you're kind of going after the fall and the winter sport coaches at this time?
Yes, we were prioritizing the fall and winter first, and then also head. If we, one of the winter coaches on there's a head coach.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, how did that one kind of get bumped to the front, being it was a winter coach?
Why are we doing that now?
Yeah, I mean, how did he,
yeah.
how did he get to the top of
Sure. We're doing them as they come. Falls are definitely our priority, as more
Okay.
come in, but winter, especially if we had a head coach come in, like we wanted to
Okay.
get those solidified as fast as we can, just because we know that, our sports are so year round now.
Yes.
In general.
Okay,
Yeah, I noticed we also have, we have 2 head coaches on here for winter sports. We have the basketball and the swimming. But I'm assuming that's so that they can kind of start getting their team in place in terms of their other coaches and get that plan together for their athletes.
Correct.
and I'm guessing they both are returning at their role that they were in last year, the head coaches?
Yes.
That were on
Yep.
here? Okay. I know there's been a lot of angst, I guess, for lack of a better word, in relation to what's happening with the cheerleaders. I know there's been a lot of steps to try to streamline that process. It looks like there's a lot of cheerleading coaches. I didn't realize there were that many. Any guess outside of the head coach, which I believe this is her second year, is that right?
Correct.
Of those other ones that are new, do you happen to know any of them that are new? Or, I'm guessing there's no more than 2 years being the head coaches. This is her second year. Do you know out of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 whether they're new to the program or their second year? Do you know?
For cheer?
Yes.
For cheer, 2 are new to the program.
And the rest are coming back.
Correct.
So again, they satisfied all of the hurdles that we now have as far as bringing in a crowd. And I say that with all due respect, because I know this is hopefully going to make things easier and more streamlined. Sure. Again, there has been a lot of consternation, there's been a lot of questions, a lot of emails from time to time in regards to things that happened last year, and it looks like we put a kind of what was called a cheer expectation plan on our head coach, and I would like to kind of get an explanation of why we're doing that.
There are some things that I cannot share because those were talked about in executive session. But we did talk about openly and publicly the number of emails that we have received in regards to the cheer program. And the board publicly also talked about a plan to be put in place for the coach.
Okay, so you mentioned a plan, and I'm guessing this would go back to kind of this is over and above the rubric. This is more of a detailed expectation of communication between parents, players, coaches, athletic directors. And it looked rather involved to the point that I don't know when she's going to be able to coach, because it looked rather detailed, which, maybe there's a good reason for it. But my question is, why just her? Why wouldn't this be something that would be, that all coaches should follow?
I think that would be a question you would have to ask yourself and the board members.
Right, Mr. Sheehan, and to your point, I was looking at that, and I think there's some very clear expectations laid out for a coach, which I'm assuming will help the coach do their job appropriately and help whoever is evaluating a coach kind of look at how well they're meeting expectations. And I was wondering as well whether, from an HR perspective, we might want to outline for each of our head coaches kind of what our expectations are for that position.
And let me say this, because we're talking about the plan as if it is something negative, and it is not anything negative. That's why it's called an expectation plan, where it clearly outlines some goals, like you said, communication with students, communication with parents, those type of things, those things that we have all received in numerous emails, just so that the coach can be successful.
Well, I guess what sticks out to me that it seems like she's experiencing an additional scrutiny, and maybe it's because of that particular group who reached out. I mean, we're assuming that everybody and every other coach and every other parent is happy. Maybe those parents just haven't reached out. Maybe this particular situation they did. She's a teacher. Is there any possibility of having some pushback from the union of her being called out and the other coaches are not?
Mr. Sheehan, again, those are things that need to be discussed in executive session.
Well, I'm talking about the expectation plan. It looks like we're putting into place an expectation plan.
You just asked me a question in regards to if there's going to be union pushback.
Okay, I'm just for instance. I just think we could, it looks like we're discriminating against a female coach. I just want us to be careful. If we're going to
be careful with those words. Let's be careful with the word
if we're going to be putting additional restrictions or additional oversight on a coach, I think we need to be careful and do it on all the coaches and not just one, just because that person got a bunch of negative emails.
And that's fine. We can talk about expectations for all head coaches.
And in general, right? We know what our parents and our community share with us, what they choose to reach out to us with. So, right, we have not heard feedback on every single coach that that we employ. How many is that?
We got 26 sports, so you think about
Over
4
26
people
sports.
per sport.
And so there tends to be, I think, additional board scrutiny when someone has reached out to express a concern. That's part of our oversight. And, you know, we want to be responsive. And certainly if there are other concerns with other athletics or other types of supplementals, our community is encouraged to reach out so that we can make sure that everything is handled as equitably as possible.
And I think I've heard from you multiple times, Mr. Sheehan, about people reaching out to you directly with issues, whether or not it's about a coach or this or that, but this was a circumstance where multiple people over multiple months reached out to the entire board. So we're not talking about an isolated incident here. And I know that, you know, you value your position on a board in being able to advocate for people that reach out to you. And that would, I would assume, you know, fall the same here as to the people that have reached out to the entire board to be able to be responsive to their concerns when something has escalated to us. I'd like to make a motion to table the supplementals outside of the anybody that has on the STA contract.
I'll second it.
So which supplementals would be that we would be still including? Which are the two teachers?
It would be the head coach, and there is a Kempton coach on there as well.
Okay. So
Just
it
for
would be,
clarification, what are we tabling? Are we tabling all supplementals or specific ones?
The supplementals on the last page that are not part of the STA contract.
He asked if it was all of them, Ms. O'Donnell.
Oh, all of those
them.
besides, yes,
Yes,
no
that's
particulars.
what
It just feels like we still have some question marks here.
So
And
on page 2
on,
or 3?
on page 2,
Okay.
everyone but the 2 teachers. Or 2, you said there's 2 people subject to the STA contract. I'm not sure which ones you've
It
mentioned.
was 2 teachers on there.
Okay, to
Okay.
2 teachers.
so tabling all of the supplementals that aren't the 2 teachers.
Yes.
Okay. So that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion of that motion?
I just feel like we still have a lot of discussion, and there was a lot happening this evening that already that I'm not prepared to vote on it yet, so.
Okay.
All right, so going back to the personnel recommendations, everything minus the supplementals that were pulled for later.
Right, we need to vote on, we need to roll call on the motion first.
I thought we were in a special meeting and we can't make motions to change anything.
This is regarding personnel matters, and this is within what we're allowed to do, very similar to what we did on the one special meeting.
We cannot add things to the agenda that were not in the notice. Personnel recommendations are, we're just talking about which personnel recommendations we're voting on.
I don't believe all board members always have a right to pull something off of something that's grouped together. And is that right?
Yes, and I did check with legal beforehand. Because it's still part of the consideration of it. You're considering the pulling of the supplementals, so it's still within the consideration of personnel recommendations.
Okay. So there are 12 supplemental recommendations. The motion is to pull 10 of those 12. Are we ready for a roll call on that, or is there more discussion? Looks like we're ready for a roll call on that.
East Jenkins,
Aye.
Marletti,
Aye.
Sheehan,
Nope.
Sudonik,
Aye.
Wind,
Aye. So now to vote on all of those personnel recommendations that were
Yes.
not set aside. Any further discussion on that? Okay, roll call, please.
East Jenkins,
Aye.
Merlady,
Aye.
Sheehan,
Aye.
Sudonik,
Aye.
Wind.
Aye. Okay, next item.
This recommendation is to hire 2 elementary principals, one to replace at Echo Hills and one to replace at Fish Creek.
Okay, our first one, do we have a motion to consider the recommendation to approve Kate Hamilton as elementary principal effective August 1st?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this one?
How many others applied for this position?
There were 42 candidates who applied for these 2 positions.
And how many were in-house, like that are currently Stow-Munroe Falls staff?
That were Stow-Munroe Falls staff? 4.
So 4 of the 42 that applied for both of these principal openings? Okay.
I would like to actually thank the committee in the process for this interview process. We had staff members from both the Echo Hills and Fish Creek schools who assisted with this to get us to this recommendation.
Roll call on Kate Hamilton?
East Jenkins,
Aye.
Merlady,
Aye.
Sheehan,
Aye.
Sudonik,
Aye.
Wind.
Aye. Now, do we have a motion to recommend that we approve Katrina Burwell as elementary principal effective August 1st?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion of this one, other than, again, thank you to everyone who
Again, thank you to
participated.
everyone
who participated, and to say that we are very excited about our two candidates. They come with a wealth of experience. Kate coming with instructional coach, elementary principal, Katrina Burwell coming with principal, assistant principal, ELA teachers. And like I said, they were both very impressive during the interview process.
Could you remind me at which schools these are?
Ms. Hamilton will be assigned to Echo Hills, and Katrina Burwell Sedan will be assigned to Fish Creek.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please.
East Jenkins,
Aye.
Merlady,
Aye.
Sheehan,
Aye.
Sudonik,
Aye.
Wind.
Aye. Well, congratulations to our two new principals. I am excited to meet them. Okay, next we have discussion items. The first one, there was a concern about the strategic plan. Dr. Gould, did you want to start that, or?
Yes, first, there was a concern about the strategic plan. In April, when we received our executive orders, I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. When we received our executive orders and through the certification that had to be signed by the superintendent, at that point, there was a recommendation to the board to look at our strategic plan for goal number 9, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. The recommendation was to remove the language and change that to opportunities for all. That was voted in. What happened is when then we got to our website, we had a document that had been prepared whom we could not find the owner of. And so the actual strategic plan was removed from the website until we could find the owner. what has happened is that we have people who are going to the website and then they put in a search. And so on the back end of the website, it was still hanging on in the Google search area. And so people were able to still pull up that old document. And so we have since worked with the website providers to remove that document. So if people go in and do a search, they will not be able to find the document that we couldn't find the original owner for. Also, sorry. Also, at the beginning of May, we brought forth a contract from the Impact Group to work with the school district on the new strategic plan, because our strategic plan will be ending for 26. In order to get prepared and do the strategic plan with fidelity, we need to start the process in the fall of 25. And so the contract was approved during that May 5th meeting, and we have started to logistically work on with them who they need to interview, focus groups of that nature. And so the board needs to participate in their visioning sessions. They did an initial work with the cabinet team last week at our cabinet retreat, and so now they will need to work with the board on some pieces to set the visioning piece and to reinforce the alignment for the district values and community priorities.
So, Mr. Sheehan, did you have any further questions about the old strategic plan?
No, this had to do with the brochure that was online. It's been removed, so I have no further discussion.
Okay, then let's move on to the question of when the board can plan a meeting to begin working with the impact group on the strategic plan. Do we know their ideal kind of timeline when they would like to have that?
When I met with them, they talked about if we could look at something in August, because then that would have given them impact from the cabinet in June, the board in August, and then they'll meet with the principal groups in September.
Okay, so ideally meet with the board before they move on
Yes,
to
yes,
other administration. Okay. And are we thinking an evening meeting then, I would assume?
I think an evening meeting like we did last year when we met in August. I think we met like August 14th.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
mid-August.
We were over at Neonet, I think.
Okay, as it stands now, we have an August meeting. We have a board meeting scheduled August 4th, and then the second one of the month on August 18th. So I'm assuming if we're talking about the strategic plan, we want a separate meeting to really dig into that, correct?
Right, because they're going to ask a lot about like doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, those type of things from the board. They're going to talk a lot about visioning and what the values are. So I think you will need a separate meeting outside of your regular board meeting.
Okay.
For that type of work.
And given that our meetings are typically on Mondays, that's where my brain starts, at least. That's when the community expects us to meet. So August 11th is a Monday and a potential option. And then August 25th. Would either of those nights work? The mic.
The 11th.
Oh, everyone wants the 11th. I'll see if I can rearrange something. I'll be tentative, I guess.
Okay, so we're definitely leaning toward the 11th. Okay.
And so we'll work on a location and what time?
Right, are we thinking 6 o'clock? Earlier, later?
I think
6
last
is
time we did
okay.
it 5.
I think it was at 5:30, something
Yeah,
like that.
5 or 5:30 last time. So
It'll still be open to the public, correct? Okay.
Yeah, it's a board meeting, so
Yeah.
it's open to the public. And we'll provide notice of the meeting, of course,
I'm sorry, what time do we want to
right?
tentatively schedule that?
You said 5:30, 6?
What does everybody
6.
think in terms of time?
6 stays consistent.
Okay.
Is everybody else
6?
okay with 6? Yeah,
So
I'm fine
we're-
with it.
August 6th then?
No, August 11th at 6.
Oh, August 11th at 6. Okay, got it.
And we'll find a space where we can kind of work. We need tables and things like that to be able to work through this.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll get back to you on the location.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, there. Made sure that was saved in the calendar. Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
East Jenkins?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
Sheehan?
Aye.
Sirdonic?
Aye.
Wind?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:46 PM.